Adam. Thank you. We have another guest speaker here, Sonia, featured in the film just now. We're going to do a quick little Q&A. I definitely want to hear your perspectives about the film that we just watched. And thank you again for highlighting that. I think that's a truth that a lot of people outside of LA don't even know. So if you guys don't mind, feel free to grab a seat real quick. And I apologize in advance. I know we're a little bit behind schedule, so I think we're going to blaze through a couple ones and then get to the next film. But just to let you all know, we have a full panel discussion with all the guests at the end. So if we don't get to any particular topic, we will revisit it in a few. I guess the big question, Adam, I know you had admitted that you weren't too familiar with this cause before, right? Tell me a little bit about your background and how this project even came to be. And then my second question is, in the process of filming all this, documenting all these different stories, what did you find most shocking? What challenged your assumptions the most?
Check. Hi. Yeah, I did not come from an organizing background. I didn't have a background in housing justice. I was just an Angelino like everyone else. I would drive around, and every year I would see more and more tents and more people living unsheltered, and sort of wonder, like, why this is one of the wealthiest cities on the planet. Why can we not get people the help they need and get people off the street? And it wasn't until I started working with Sonia and Harvey and Michelle, the other people you met in the film, who were all navigating houselessness, did I realize that I was sort of laboring under a lot of misconceptions and myths and sort of bullshit stereotypes that were informing how I thought about the problem and how I felt about unhoused people. We could talk all night about what those stereotypes are. Just to make this more interactive, does anyone want to throw out an idea of a myth about homeless people that we all kind of suffer from, or we all kind of believe? What is it? Yeah, they want to stay. Yeah. They don't have a job. Drug addicts, they're all addicts. Mental health, it's all mental health based. Yeah. And they don't work hard. Yeah. So I think that by misunderstanding that and believing in those stereotypes, our elected officials can fall into the same trap, and it leads people to misdiagnose the problem. And if there's one takeaway from the film that I want people to know, it's like when you pursue a criminalization model, when you lead with the cops and you take people's stuff and throw it in the garbage truck, not only is it cruel, not only is it ineffective, not only are we kicking the most vulnerable people in the city while they're down, but ironically it traps people in a cycle of destabilization that they can't get out of. So ironically, you're keeping people on the street even when you want to be getting rid of the tents.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was alluded to in the film, but the things that you could potentially lose during a sweep. Okay. I've heard about people losing their medication. I've heard people losing their driver's licenses. We had an example of somebody, the ashes of their dead relative thrown away. Like, it is so careless. And even if they're given a temporary hotel voucher, motel voucher, or something like that, there's a time limit on that. Sometimes that's only worth 6 months or something. They're forcibly displaced, oftentimes to a different part of town entirely, put up in a hotel room, isolated, they're not with their community, they just lost all their belongings, and then when that hotel voucher is up, they're cycled back onto the street again, only now they have less resources than what they had initially. And it's such an ultimatum. Like, when the cops approach you, they're like, we're gonna put you in handcuffs, or we're gonna ticket you unless you give up all of your belongings right now and come in this car and follow us to a hotel. And I can't think of a more destabilizing situation than that. I mean, to even get a job, you need a driver's license. Like, if that's thrown away, like, what do you even do with that? It's so difficult. And a lot of what we try to do in mutual aid, like when we do a homelessness resources fair or something like that, oftentimes we'll have the DMV there, the DMV issuing, new driver's licenses because these things get lost during the sweeps. It's so frustrating. Sonia, I'd love to get your perspective on all of this. I know, as both somebody who has lived experience and then you later became an advocate and a defender of other unhoused people, I'd love to get your perspective over this entire process. Like, what is a huge misconception that I think a lot of people have about it? What lesson would you want to impart on people tonight, if you could?
Just to keep up the work, first of all, is what I'd want the lesson to be, is like not to give up on what we're all out there doing already. I know it's like frustrating because we don't see any results, but there's people out there depending on us, and I know I depended on my advocates when I was out there. People just automatically put a blanket over homeless people. Maybe we don't in this room, but the general public does. They go off the news and what's being told to them by politicians and whoever of their just everything you guys just said, drug addicts and don't want to work and don't want to, stay inside. And all of that's not even true. The reason why people don't stay inside, I'm sure everybody in this room knows, is because they get cycled in and out. They get kicked out into the street for stupid reasons that Inside Safe has or Project Room Key used to have, or it's so isolating that I've seen more overdoses when I was in Project Room Key than I've ever seen in my life being on the street, because of the isolation. And that to me is like really scary, and no care behind that. They wouldn't even notify the other residents, like what's going on, you know what I mean? And to me, that non-caring approach is really awful. The mayor's always touting how she's housed this many people, that many people, this many thousand. She's not housing people. She's rotating people in and out of a cycle of hotel rooms and sometimes interim housing spots, but very few are getting actually housed, and that's what we need. We need people to get actually into housing.
Thank you. I want to bring up a couple facts about homelessness in LA. As you saw from the stat earlier, LA County has 75,000 unhoused people. At this point, I think that number is closer to 80,000. Now, the perception is a lot of people who are unhoused want to stay on the street. They don't want to get housed. But I want to tell you this really crazy fact, right? The county of LA only has about 27,000 shelter beds, right? We have an unhoused population of 80,000, but only 27,000 shelter beds in the entire city. So even if everybody did want to get into a shelter, it's just not there. It's just not there. And part of the reason is that if you compare it to a city like New York, right, where, New York, you've got very harsh winters and things like that. They actually have mandates like, okay, if you're, and I'm just throwing out a hypothetical number here in New York because I'm not entirely sure what the numbers are, but let's say, for example, if your unhoused population is 200,000, New York has a mandate you need 200,000 beds because the winters are so harsh that it's a matter of life or death. Now, the thing in LA is they don't think it's a matter of life and death. Maybe the weather is too good, or there's just no political will to do it, or whatever. We've had this kind of political philosophy here, just let them live on the street. We'll just contain them, brush them aside, or whatever. But there's no urgency at all to make shelters in LA. And it's so frustrating. And the unfortunate thing, too, is it actually is a matter of life and death. I mean, throughout the pandemic, we were losing 1,500 unhoused people in LA every single year. And a lot of that was, fentanyl, but a lot of it is also just exposure. It's heat exhaustion. It's dehydration. It's dying in the cold. Our winters are sneaky cold out here, and a lot of people, if they don't have the proper blankets, the insulation, all that, if a lot of this stuff gets swept and thrown away or whatever, you really have no resources. You have very little material belongings with you, and you're on the street, and there are no shelters, and it's tough. It actually is a matter of life and death. I have a friend, Roxanne, who she works in the LA coroner's office and literally sees every single day these 5 people coming in unhoused, passed away, and it's terrible, and this is something that is kind of a recent phenomenon, and it keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. So I do want to impart that on you guys tonight. It is incredibly urgent. There is a huge humanitarian cost to apathy, and we've been paying it, and it's awful. I mean, can't even think of how many people I was on a first name basis with, people I would call friends who have died. I think the number might be 12 or 13, and it is terrifying. That being said, there are a couple things here that I am actually optimistic about, and these are hard-fought silver linings, but I think we've come to a tipping point in LA and maybe in America where homelessness has actually been such a crisis, right? And here's an example, right? In 2023, across the entire nation of America, homelessness increased by 12%, right? A lot of that was due to inflation and the lingering impacts of the pandemic. In 2024, by the way, that was the largest increase in homelessness on record in the entire country. 12% it jumped, 2023. Does anybody know how much it jumped in 2024? 18%. It broke all records. 12% and then 18% on top of that, right? Now, this is awful. I wouldn't wish this on any country. I mean, we're a failed state, if you ask me. But here's the thing, though, right? With this potential silver lining is that it is such a widespread crisis. And I think, especially with people coming out of the pandemic, or maybe even these ICE raids, right, where you can lose your job overnight, right? The economy is incredibly unstable. Inflation is like making the cost of living incredibly bad, right? I think we're hitting a tipping point where it can impact anybody. Anybody can be homeless. I think anybody now innately knows. Like, it doesn't matter if I live in a big city like LA or if I live in a small mid-city in the West. Anything can happen. Addiction is rampant and all that. So now I think people are thinking like, wait, this is actually systemic. You know, those old narratives of like, oh, it's addiction, it's mental health or whatever, those are falling apart. And within that, I think there's an opportunity to actually build systems that are real. And it still takes a little bit more convincing. I think in America we have an empathy or a lack of empathy problem. But just like how the Great Depression led to the New Deal and the growth of like the American middle class, I think we're hitting a Great Depression point in homelessness where the problem cannot be ignored. And now we have an opportunity to build something better because all the old excuses don't apply anymore. And this is just my perspective. I'm an optimist, maybe to a fault. I don't know, does anybody here feel like the tide is turning? Just raise a hand, or am I just talking out of my ass? 1, 2. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, not enough. I'm talking out of my ass. I'm sorry. Only 5 people raised their hands. And on that note, why don't we go to the next film? But please, when you watch the next one, Camp to Home, I think maybe that'll help bring out the optimism in you. So meet me halfway, people.
I want to say that too. We are going to spend time talking about solutions. It's not going to be all doom and gloom, I promise.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about.